This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Well, this is one of those episodes where you got something planned, and we're still going to get to it. Federal polling. David Valentin's going to join us from Liaison Strategies, but everybody's talking right now. If you pay attention to politics in Canada, in particular, politics in Alberta, everybody is paying attention to the story of Evan Lee. This is a high school kid down in Calgary who attended one of these Alberta Next panels, had his moment to put a question in front of the Premier and her panel at this live event down in Calgary, moderated by Bruce McAllister, a former colleague of mine, by the way, with Global News, Chorus, now an employee of the provincial government. He was an MLA as well for the Wild Rose Party. This guy's seen politics from the broadcasting side. He has seen it from the legislative side, from the elected side, and of course now he's seeing it as a government-adjacent professional. If this story is off your radar, this is new to you, you're going to wonder why on earth is Jespersen immediately talking about and spending time on the moderator of this debate. But it was the moderation of this panel, I should say, that's got everybody's attention. A high school kid by the name of Evan Lee has a chance to approach this panel of experts that's been put together by the Premier and by her government. They've been traveling the province, sort of a traveling roadshow, so to speak, touching down in municipalities, Grand Prairie, Lethbridge, and others. This was Calgary's turn. The next one coming up is online, by the way. The idea to get a sense, the government says that it wants to get a sense of what its citizens, what Albertans are looking for next, what Albertans are looking for in the relationship with Ottawa. But here's the deal. When you make those mics available to the general public, you're going to have folks that have their top priorities or the top issue, the top political issue or otherwise on their radar, and that's going to surface. Well, this is where everything seems to have gone a little bit sideways just a short time ago in Calgary. The panel and its moderator want people to be talking about an Alberta police force. They want people to be talking about the future of policing in Alberta. But when you open up microphones at an event, well, you know how that can go. I know how that can go because I host events like this, not for the UCP, but for other organizations all the time. I've walked miles and miles and miles and miles in moderator Bruce McAllister's shoes. So I can understand where he's coming from, and I want to talk in a moment a little bit about the decisions that were made. I'm going to call them editorial decisions that were made when this unfolded. First today, in a twist, this is what happens when you live stream. We're going to go straight to our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. David Valentin is principal at Liaison Strategies. They've been completing their annual polling on approval ratings for politicians both north and south of the border. David, welcome to the show. It's nice to see your face.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a pretty interesting time to be taking a look at how Canadians are feeling about politicians north and south of the border. The dynamic between those two governments probably never been as strained as it is right now.
Well, and part of the reason we wanted to do the survey this way this year was, people in my office have been telling me, a lot of Canadians know more about American politics than they knew about Canadian politics. And so I said, well, what's a way to test that? How would we, because if you ask people, what do you follow more, Canadian or American? They're going to tell you Canadian, right? So I said, let's figure out some other way to test and see where the interest lies. And to be fair to the politicians up here, what's happening down south is like a circus every single day, 24/7. And we all know we can get the news from MSNBC or Fox News or CNN, and we will see that circus in real time at the click of a button. So it doesn't surprise me to a certain extent, some of the findings from the survey.
Okay, so Mark Carney's held government now for a number of months after being elected late April. I suppose there have been some wins, but generally speaking, Canadians are still waiting for the big one, and that's a trade deal with the United States. We've seen some new tariffs introduced just this week. It's impacting, in this case, home renovators, cabinet makers, and the like. What do Canadians have to say about the performance of Mark Carney to this point?
Well, I think up to date, the Canadians have been very patient, and we're seeing a strong positive approval rating for Mr. Carney right now. He's at 60% approval and a plus 16 net approval. That means he's got more approval than he has disapproval. So he's doing pretty well. But I think, to your point, the big deal hasn't come through yet. We heard today that that deal might not come until next year. And it'll be on the other side of a budget for the most part now, because that budget is coming very early November. So once that budget arrives, I think we'll have a much broader understanding and deeper understanding of what Canadians make of him.
Yeah, to say the least, I think people are still kind of getting a sense of what the government's going to look like, and pre-budget. It's pretty difficult to determine that, I guess. Number one, we haven't necessarily seen the government's top priorities put down when it comes to the investments or when it comes to the dollars and cents. What about on the opposition side? Pierre Poilievre loses the election, but resoundingly wins a by-election, another shot at it in August. He now earns his way back into the House of Commons to oppose. There's been some talk about how he may fare at his leadership review coming up in January. What do Canadians, generally speaking, not party members, but what do Canadians, generally speaking, have to say about it?
Well, generally for Mr. Poilievre, the numbers are not so great. They haven't been for a while. They weren't before the election, they weren't during the election, and they took a bit of a jump after the election. But these are actually the numbers we have today it's a weird way to say it. These are very positive given the year-long trend for him right now. And we've got a 38% approval rating, a 54% disapproval rating. So if you're doing the math in the morning, and don't worry, I'll do it for you right now if you're not ready, that's a minus 16% net approval. So even though he's at minus 16, strange to say, this is a good number for him relative of where he's been for the rest of the year.
How about Andrew Scheer? We had a conversation with Rachel Gilmore, independent journalist, a couple of days ago on the show, and she got into an online dust up, I guess you might call it. That sounds a little bit flippant on my part, probably more serious than that. With Andrew Scheer, who engaged her on her comments following the Charlie Kirk murder. Tough look, I think, for Mr. Scheer, generally speaking, among the general public. Rabid conservatives may have loved it, but it felt like a curious play to me. How does he remain in the eyes of Canadians? I know you asked specifically about him.
So Mr. Scheer, and just for context, was the party leader for a while. So more Canadians are aware of him than, say, some of the other political leaders we tested, actually. But all that being said, it's a minus 12 for Mr. Scheer. So more people dislike him than like him. And part of that just has to do, I think, with the fact that conservatives like him, but there are less conservatives these days, right? And some of the comments he makes online can be a bit abrasive.
Is this a risk? I mean, is it a risk for the Conservative Party, polling-wise, do you think, to continue to have Andrew Scheer in the limelight or in any position of leadership within the party? I mean, what are you taking from the numbers?
For me, I think the question is, are we going to see a change after Mr. Poilievre's leadership review? Because right now, everything we know is that this review could be very tough. We saw two reviews in Ontario, one for the Ontario Liberals. That leader, Bonnie Crombie, lost her review. The other, Marit Stiles, got a very weak score in her review. And these are two leaders who are expected to continue. People are expecting Mr. Poilievre to continue, and maybe he will, but maybe he won't, right? So I think for now, he runs the risk if he starts changing things around, moving key players around, that could be a risk with party members. So I think until the review is over, his overarching concern, yes, he needs to talk to Canadians. Yes, he needs to broaden the base, but he also won't get to do any of those things and fight the next election if he's turfed as the leader, right?
Yeah, for sure. Melissa Lantsman, high-profile conservative, for sure. You asked Canadians particularly how they feel about her performance, what her approval rating looks like. How is it?
She's got a +8. This is the one conservative politician we found with a positive approval rating. Now, less people know Melissa Lantsman, but those who do, more like her than dislike her. So that's a very good sign.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, I caught myself. I was about to be a real prick and ask if it's worthwhile asking about the federal NDP. Of course it is. It's a political party with, I suppose, a base that feels very strongly about what that party should represent, but it was greatly diminished in presence and in influence after the last federal election. It's a party right now that's searching for a new leader. I imagine you had to do some polling on the potential future leaders of the NDP.
That's right. And listen, for the NDP, they're in a leadership race right now. I've had some people ask me, what do these numbers mean for the leadership race? They mean absolutely nothing. This is a poll of Canada, not of just the NDP members. There are, relatively very few NDP members. They would be very hard to find. But all that being said, they've all got positive ratings. Just people don't really know very much about them. Mr. Davies, who's the interim leader, he's got a plus 10. Mr. Avi Lewis, he's better known, actually. There's a lot of people who don't know if they like him or dislike him, but they've heard his name. He's got a plus 3. He's entered the race. And Miss McPherson, at the time of this survey, she hadn't entered the race. She has done that now, and she's got a plus 5. And of course, she's an NDP MP in Alberta.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, representing a constituency not far from our studio here, the Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton. She that Edmonton Strathcona riding. Pretty interesting one. It's flipped back and forth over the years between Conservatives and the NDP. People may remember Raheem Jaffer's political career. He's currently running to be the mayor of Edmonton in an interesting campaign that he's running. Heather McPherson stays in that stronghold that Linda Duncan held before her. Same riding with different boundaries. I'll point out for context that currently Nahad Nenshi is representing provincially the Edmonton Strathcona riding as well. But do you get the sense, or did your numbers give you any sense that riding could flip or be susceptible to a Conservative take back next federal election? Like, what do Heather McPherson's numbers tell you about the future in that region?
That's really hard to say. And I think the one thing I would point out is that the NDP has recovered a bit in terms of its overall numbers, in terms of its regional numbers in Alberta and British Columbia. So I think it would be harder if you were modeling it out for the Conservatives to take it back. But, it's early days yet. And if Miss McPherson ends up being the leader of the NDP, one imagines it would be harder for the Conservatives to win that back.
Yeah, David, we're talking to David Valentin. If you're just joining us in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West Liaison Strategies. We're not going to see a federal election today. We're not going to see one this fall, this spring. But with a minority government, you never really know. I mean, it is possible that Canadians could see an election in the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months if this government can't find a way to pass its bills in the House. You did ask Canadians if an election were held today, always an interesting exercise, which party would they vote for? Is it as tight or is there some distance created since the end of April? What insights did you glean?
So right now it's a 6-point lead for the Liberals, which doesn't sound like very much. 6 points, that could be pretty. So I think that'd be a pretty even split depending on how things go. But the regional numbers really tell a different photo. And that is that the Conservatives have a lot of support in Alberta, have a lot of support in the prairies, and they have so much support there, but there's only so many seats, right? And so their vote is very inefficient. The Liberals, meanwhile, they have these big leads in Quebec and Ontario. And so as a result, there being so many seats in Quebec and Ontario, they have an easier time winning a minority government. So if you went through the exercise today and people voted as per this poll, then you would end up with a Liberal majority government, even though they're only 6 points ahead.
Yeah.
And that's just a system that we have in place, right?
Yeah, but isn't that interesting how that plays out? That just the slight adjustments here or there could move a government from minority to majority. I mean, this is all a hypothetical exercise, so we'll take it for what it's worth. Did you ask Canadians? Did you have a chance to ask about some of Carney's senior cabinet ministers and get a sense of how Canadians feel about the team around the Prime Minister?
We did, and and every single minister we asked about had a net positive rating, right? Whether it was the finance minister, the environment minister, the housing minister, everybody got a rating in the positives. What was really interesting to us was how many people did not know any of these cabinet ministers. And so for the average minister, 43% of Canadians did not have a real opinion on them. They could not say if they approved or disapproved of the job that they were doing. And that's a pretty high number. It's almost 1 in 2 Canadians who can't really sort of score. And this is with us telling them this is the person, this is the ministry, this is the result we got. I'm sure if we had just asked them to name the ministers and provided no prompting whatsoever, the scores would have been even lower.
Is that unusual for you when you see that? Like, I mean, that sort of lack of familiarity seems to make sense to me. Canadians haven't really, I mean, essentially, while not technically, parliamentarians were off for the summer. They would argue otherwise, but they weren't sitting like many Canadians wanted them to. Like we pointed out earlier, they haven't seen a budget. Is this to be expected right now, or has this government failed to connect with Canadians in a way?
I think the interesting lesson is that it didn't really matter how long these ministers were in office, right? We saw Gregor Robertson, the housing minister, get a good grade. We saw Julie DeBruzen, the environment minister, get a good grade. These are relative newcomers to cabinet compared to someone like Francois Philippe Champagne or Dominic LeBlanc, who both served in Mr. Trudeau's cabinet. So I think to a certain extent, people are happy with the government. They're willing to give it a chance. How these ministers are doing one-on-one, it seems to matter less to people than how Mr. Carney is doing, and he's doing pretty well in his own approval ratings, though they have been coming down. I think that's important to point out. He's lost 8 points over the summer in his approval, so he's gone from 68 to 60, but 60 is still pretty good given where we are today in politics in Canada. So
Yeah,
I think it's less about the ministers and more about the government.
you're right. 60% approval is, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like high school kids never want to tell their parents they're achieving 60 on their exams. But if you're a politician with an approval rating, that's pretty darn good. But a loss of 8 points is significant, right? Like, I mean, 15% approximately ish of where he was at before. I mean, if you're advising the prime minister, which will be clear you're not, but if you are, is that cause for concern, or is this the natural order settling back in?
The question is, is the honeymoon over? And is the slide going to continue? And I think the interesting thing for me is the slide takes us right into the budget, which could either really cut the approval ratings or boost them up, right? There's always the potential people really like the budget and that Mr. Carney's approval goes up, though I've seen people hypothesizing otherwise. That being said, Justin Trudeau's honeymoon period lasted 2.5 years. So if we're seeing this big jolt, this big loss in support, and it's going to continue in the next few months, that is concerning, especially because, as you mentioned, we're in a minority government. The Conservatives would love an election. The NDP and the Bloc Québécois not so much. But at a certain point, 1 or 2 years down the road, that calculation could change. And they could be saying to themselves, the prime minister is weak. He's passed some tough budgets. People don't like the choices he's making. Maybe this trade deal with the US never comes, right? We don't know what's in the future. And that's why we find it useful to track these things in monthly increments.
Did Justin Trudeau have some sort of special sauce to be able to maintain a solid approval rating for 2+ years, that honeymoon period, as you called it? What do you attribute that?
I think it just depends on the times, right? And the situation that you're in. And he started off and was given a tremendous amount of runway to enact change and did a lot of things. Now, some people would say that those accomplishments weren't very good or it wasn't really him, but we were in a different economic situation in 2015, right? And we had a different politics in 2015. So it would have been a lot easier for him to maintain that. Even just when you think about it, 10 years ago, the proliferation of TikTok and other apps and other news sharing, they hadn't really started yet. So we're just in a different media environment now. And I think, if we're not careful, we end up living in different realities sometimes.
Yeah, no kidding. Different reality. It feels like a segue to ask you how Canadians are feeling about what they're seeing out of the White House. The president, within the last 24 hours, when you and I are talking, has in front of American military brass rekindled that idea of the 51st state. He's introduced more tariffs, as mentioned, adding to the list of Canadian companies, manufacturers, exporters that are being greatly affected by this and what's traditionally been a pretty stable trading relationship and otherwise. What's your sense of where Canadians are at specifically when it comes to approval on the job that Donald Trump is doing as U.S. president?
Well, they really disapprove of him. And I think that's an understatement, to be honest. But, Mr. Carney's got this great big green line. Mr. Trump has this ginormous, massive red line. He's at minus 59%, which means even if you take away all the people who like Mr. Trump in this country, there's still 59% disapproval rate. That's a very high disapproval. And every single member of his cabinet gets a disapproval too. There's no one in that administration that Canadians have a lot of time for.
Yeah, I mean, you polled. I'm just looking here, and again, we're talking. This is Liaison Strategies that's done this polling here. We're talking J.D. Vance, Pam Bondi here. I mean, Hegseth, U.S. Secretary of Defense, who's all over the news right now for letting the world know, putting the world on notice that the U.S. Department of War is entering the FAFO phase. If you know, you know. That's pretty remarkable coming from the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Kristi Noem, Marco Rubio, and others. What insights can you give us generally speaking? We won't run through every single one of these individually, but what particularly jumps out at you from your polling results?
Well, the only person more disliked than Donald Trump in Canada is RFK, which is really interesting, but maybe not surprising given just how vociferous he's been in terms of attacking vaccines, attacking science, generally having controversies. Even when we look at the secretaries that don't really have high disapproval ratings, Mr. Hegseth, Pam Bondi, Scott Bessent, they only don't have those high disapprovals because Canadians don't know who they are. So the second Canadians have an opinion on these people, it's a negative one. And that's sort of what our takeaway from this. They know who they are at levels much higher than the Canadian cabinet. Earlier I said, about 43% of Canadians can't have a clear opinion on a Canadian cabinet minister. That goes down to 34% for the American cabinet. So they're much more familiar with the American figures than they are the Canadian ones. But that being said, they like the Canadian ones. They do not like the American ones.
Are you a little, I mean, candidly, are you a little surprised that RFK Jr. is polling worse in the eyes of Canadians than the president himself? Like, I don't think anybody believes, well, whatever. Let me hand it over to you for your take on this. I'm a little surprised to hear that, to be honest with you.
The only reason he's polling worse is because Mr. Trump has positives that Mr. Kennedy does not. The disapprovals are about the same. It's just that more people like Mr. Trump than do Mr. Kennedy. So as a result, he has a much lower net negative score. And it's not lower by too much, just by 2 points, but it's still the lowest score among the bunch.
Yeah.
So it is surprising, but also when you look at the details, not that surprising.
Interesting stuff. David, I guess I could have led with this, but I wanted to make sure that I wrapped with it. An opportunity for you to toot your own horn a little bit. Your team has compiled a list, a ranking, rather, of 2025 election accuracy. And I like this. You've put all of your colleagues, you've put your competitors on this list. Your team at Liaison Strategies tops number 1 out of 11 when it came to election accuracy. You're polling around Ontario's election, and number 2 out of 11 when it comes to the federal election and the accuracy of your polling. Number 1, congratulations. It's a big deal. Obviously, critics of polls like to brush them off, shrug them off, and suggest that, well, it's just polling, and the only polls that matter are on Election Day, which to a certain degree is true. But to be number 1 in Ontario, number 2 on the national stage, can you give us some insights into your polling process or why you think that your team was able to remain near or at the top in both of those elections?
I think part of it is always the methodology. And even though a lot of companies have moved to online, and I understand why, online is easier to do, it is cheaper to do. In many cases, you're paying someone else to assemble an online panel for you. And then, you ask them the questions, you do your weighting, and that's the end of that. Not a lot of effort, not a lot of creativity can go into these things sometimes. But, to the credit of my colleagues, some of them are running really advanced panels. Some of them are doing all the recruitment themselves, and they're all doing excellent work in the field, even given those challenges. But for us, we've always believed in the power of randomness, of mathematics, of the telephone. And even though it becomes harder every single year to do it, our team's been really focused on getting a high quality sample that represents Canadians so that we have to do as little adjustments as possible. And so we're trying to do the adjustments on the way in with the sample that we curate and not on the way out once we actually have all the results. That's the big differential for us. And we're really happy with the results. And listen, even on national where we ranked second, we almost made it to first. We were only off by, I think, 0.5 from
Is that right?
first. So, but you know what? If you run an election and you lose by 5 votes, you still lost, right? So we'll take that in place. That's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm the nephew of an uncle who won bronze in Sapporo in 1972, one of the crazy Canucks, Jungle Jim Hunter. And I've had many, many conversations with him about what it's like to just narrowly miss the gold medal, but also recognizing how cool it is to have an Olympic medal. So I would say silver for you following the federal election. Not too bad. Maybe it keeps you hungry. You go take the gold next time around.
Well, that's what we'd like to do. And who knows when we'll do it. Maybe it'll be in a year or 2 years, or maybe this government will last all 4 years. But we'll be ready to do it when it comes.
Yeah. Do you have a gut instinct on that? Do you have, I mean, I earlier said we could see an election. I don't believe in the next 12 months, but I think, within the next 18 to 24, it depends, right? It depends if they can get those votes that they're going to need as a minority government. I'm not explaining it to you, obviously, but if they can't get those votes, and if it becomes, apparent and obvious that this government's going to have to go back to Canadians to get another mandate, I mean, can you see that happening within the next couple of years?
I think the first question for me is what happens to Mr. Poilievre? And when everyone says something's going to happen, I'm very skeptical, right? So as people keep telling me he's going to survive, he's going to survive. Maybe he will, but we have to be open to the possibility he won't. And so if he doesn't survive his leadership review, who ends up being leader of the Conservative Party, right? I have no idea who that would be at this point. I think it could go in very many different directions. I think that's the first question that we have to have answered. The second is who's going to be NDP leader? Because even though they only have a few seats in the House, those add up, those can count. You can win a vote depending on who's in the House at any given point based on that. Maybe there are some by-elections that the Liberals are able to win, so they're able to get a little closer. You really have to think about it from that perspective. And if it's someone like Mr. Lewis who's elected, is the caucus going to want to listen to him? I don't know. Great question. So I think we have to sort of see what happens with these leadership races and with the leadership review, I should say.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think we'll have a better understanding of if it's 18 months or 36 months or a full 4 years, right? But I think the average minority parliament lasts around 2 years. So let's budget for that for now.
Yeah. Great insights, David. Nice work with your polling around those two elections. And we always appreciate your availability. Thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you got it. That's David Valentin, leads the team at Liaison Strategies. You can find him online at liaison.ca, and we'll link to that in the show notes. Real Talkers, as always, we want to know what you think about what you heard here. You can leave a comment in the live chat. I see here Les says that in our live chat powered by Park Power that RFK is a walking brain worm. While at the same time, Boomshanker X is a big fan of RFK, says I'm in favor of challenging the status quo. Well, he definitely does that. If you're listening to this later on the podcast or catching it on YouTube after our live stream, you can always send us an email. We encourage it to talk@ryanjespersen.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people, so you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
All right, we'll get to that Alberta Next story in just a moment, but first, a message from our friends at North Road Investment Council. When it comes to investing, Real Talkers, more and more people are catching on. If most mutual funds don't even beat the index, then why not just own the index itself, right? So you hear a lot about the S&P 500. Standard & Poor's research from 2024 lays it out. About 4 out of 5 Canadians, or let's say this, put it this way, in the sense of the equity mutual funds, how about this? 80% of Canadian equity mutual funds are actually underperforming the benchmark they're tracking. And that's why North Road Investment Council builds customized passive portfolios that actually aim to capture those market returns while still reflecting your values. And that means that you can keep out industries that you're not a big fan of or avoid companies you're personally tied to. That can be an issue for sure. Or design your portfolio for smarter tax efficiency. And for families and institutions with about $2 million or more to invest, North Road can even create fully customized factor portfolios in Canada and the United States. At North Road Investment Council, they don't deny that the markets are competitive, they embrace it. Get a better sense of how they can build your custom portfolio by checking out their website. That's northroadic.com. Hey, if you're listening to this episode the day that we're doing it, it is October 1st, which means that it's 15% off all grocery purchases at Friesen Brothers locations across the province. All grocery purchases of $75 or more qualify. This is an amazing way to keep more money in your wallet and stretch your family's dollars as far as they can go. I also recommend, before you head into the store, you can always pick one up in store, that Family Essentials flyer. Our family loves this. Quality food for low prices every day, including recipes. It's a wonderful resource, just one of the many ways that Friesen Brothers is making it easier for you to put good food on the table without breaking the bank. You can find that Family Essentials flyer and details on Oktoberfest and some of the other wonderful things coming up. The Thanksgiving dinner box, pre-order so you don't have to deal with it. Everything online at friesen.com. Our friends at UCAN Youth Services, about a month now into their new location in downtown Edmonton, that's going to allow them to double the impact of the youth that they're working with. Helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence is what UCAN Youth Services does. You can learn more about their work, including some pre-employment programs. A really great one, a construction employment program called the Road to Work program. It's a collaboration between UCAN and companies in the construction, road building, and traffic safety industries. If you're an employer, in your workplace, if you're in charge of hiring entry-level workers and you're looking for those that are motivated, trained, and ready to make an impact on your corporate culture in the right direction, contact UCAN today. Companies like IKEA, Tim Hortons are partnering with UCAN and seeing the results. Again, that's UCAN Youth Services at ucan.ca. And our friends at California Closets want to remind you that they are the best in the business at custom closets and storage solutions, and they're doing it all right here out of our home province of Alberta. That's where the manufacturing happens. That's where the ownership is. California Closets can work with any space and any budget, and everything they install is guaranteed for the life of your home. Buy with confidence. Invest in your space with a California Closets installation, whether it's your entryway, your laundry room, maybe it's that second bedroom or that dream walk-in closet. A free consultation with a California Closets designer can get you set in the right direction. You can book that today at californiaclosets.ca. All right, so here's this story that's been making news not just across the country, that's safe to say, but if you've been paying attention online, even on forums like Reddit, you've seen the name Evan Lee pop up. This is a Calgary high school student who had his moment, or at least was supposed to have his moment, at an Alberta Next panel in his hometown of Calgary. This is the panel that's been traveling the province with in-person town hall events. You've seen them in Lethbridge, you've seen them in Grand Prairie, and elsewhere. We've been talking about it through the summer. This is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and her UCP government's good faith argument, they've said, to get a sense of where Albertans are at, what they want to see next from the provincial government, what they'd like to see in that relationship with the federal government, with Mark Carney's Liberals in Ottawa. And much has been discussed at these panels, including the possibility, or perhaps the inevitability, if Smith's premier long enough, of an Alberta police service. That's what moderator Bruce McAllister wanted speakers to stick to. But if you've ever been to a town hall, if you've ever been to a wedding reception with an open mic, you know that sometimes there are twists and turns. And when civilians have a chance to directly address their premier, oftentimes, you may assume, and it would make sense, they're going to take that opportunity to take the number one issue in their life, the number one issue in their orbit, and make it forefront. So while Bruce McAllister, a veteran broadcaster, a former MLA, and a current government employee, making a fat cat salary, by the way, if we're being honest, to moderate these panels and participate or roll out government comms, tries to keep the messaging to the Alberta Police Service, that's not what high school student Evan Lee has in mind. He sees that Alberta teachers have voted resoundingly to strike. They voted to reject the government's recent offer. October 6th is the day that everybody has circled on their calendars for that. And he wanted answers from the premier. Now, we don't know entirely what Evan Lee wanted to put in front of the premier in the form of a question, because as you're about to hear, his mic was cut off. And if I may say, very early in his question. Now, I've got some observations on this, some thoughts on this, and I'm sure that Real Talkers do as well in our live chat. But before we get to that, let's hear how things went down in Calgary. Here it is.
My name is Evan Lee. I'm a Calgary high school student. Like many high school students, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen to the upcoming Alberta teachers strike, which just an hour ago, they voted 89.5 in favor of striking.
Evan?
And my question is, why is the government handing out four...
Here's the thing, Evan. Evan, I applaud you coming here to speak. I don't applaud how you're trying to speak. It's not making any sense. So we're going to move along, okay? Let's go over to this microphone, okay? I know you'd love some chaos, but your parents should turn you over your knee. Let's go over here.
Oh, that's rude. That's rude. No. Rude.
Go ahead.
That is disgraceful.
Okay. Now, you heard, by the way, that was another member of the public. I believe her name was Jennifer that was speaking after. She was the one, to her credit, and she deserves a lot of credit for saying into the microphone, no, that was rude. No, you're dismissing a teenager. That was disgraceful. As that clip goes on, by the way, she starts to ask her question, and she wants to ask about marginalized communities. And you can see it all, by the way, online on CPAC's YouTube channel. And guess what? Her mic was cut as well. And Bruce McAllister goes on after that to suggest that the conversation will continue as soon as that lady leaves. So there are a couple of bonkers things that went down. Number one, Evan Lee having his mic cut mid-sentence. Told by Bruce McAllister that Bruce says, basically, I like what you bring to the table. He says, but I don't like the way that you're saying it. What's he talking about? Evan Lee got 10 seconds into his question. He had no opportunity to get snarky. He came in a little hot. He came in overmodulated and enthusiastic, probably because he's a teenager. He's a high school student that has the premier and a panel of so-called experts, and some of them are experts in their field, not to diminish their credibility, but this is a high school student that's staring down a panel and has, in his mind, I'm sure, thousands and thousands of Alberta students and families and maybe even Alberta teachers behind him. He feels like he's speaking for them. And this is, if it's not already, soon to be the biggest issue in the province of Alberta, right? When thousands and thousands and thousands of teachers go on strike and students are at home and the government has to figure out a way to manage the optics of it. Teachers, by the way, will have to find a way to manage the optics of it as well. More on that in a moment, as the government has rolled out an announcement relating to financial compensation and support for families during the teachers' strike. But back to the point of this. The teen getting cut off at the Alberta Next panel. Oh, and by the way, the professional moderator suggesting that he should be spanked. That's egregious, by the way. It's actually I guess well, what's the nice way to say sick and twisted? It's a bit of a perverted comment, is it? It's Real Talk. We stream online. We're our own boss. I can say it's a fucked up thing to say to a high school student who's trying to get a question out about the teacher strike, that he should be spanked. I believe that you would probably, in the real world, outside of politics and outside of these plum appointments, be fired if you were to say something like that at a corporate event, or if you were to say something like that to a stakeholder like Evan Lee is. So Bruce McAllister says that, dismisses him, cuts his mic, and then the next speaker has her mic cut as well. So the internet explodes, including on Reddit, where Evan Lee himself has posted his take on what happened, and the comments are not kind to this government. A lot of people are questioning the validity of the Traveling Road Show, of the Dog and Pony Show, the Alberta Next panels, for this exact reason. The moment that a dissenting opinion is brought forth, or the moment that a citizen capitalizes on the opportunity to put a tough question in front of the premier or in front of a minister or in front of one of their panel of experts that doesn't go exactly the way that the government envisions it to go or that the moderator envisions it to go, that they're going to be cut off. Free speech and all. So Alberta's premier is asked about this, understandably, hours after the incident. And here's what Danielle Smith has to say about it.
The apology from Bruce, but also the fact that these students' mic was cut off. It seems to be something that's happened at several of these Alberta Next town halls. Can you just speak to that as well? As some folks say it's kind of inhibiting free speech.
Yeah, well, we are doing a consultation on our relationship with Ottawa, and some have come up with pretty creative ways to be able to connect their personal issue with a broader discussion about what it is that we're consulting on, and some haven't. And so Bruce always has said at every meeting that if you can be on topic, he'll give you some latitude, and if not, he would direct you to the local MLAs in the room. Same thing happened last night. So there were a couple of times that he redirected the folks at the mic to be able to speak to either of the local MLAs. And so we've got one more that we're going to be doing. It's an online one, and it will just be the same thing. Let's try to stay focused on the topic that we're discussing, which is a consultation around our relationship with Ottawa. I make myself available at multiple town halls, my online radio show every 2 weeks. There's lots and lots of ways for people to come out and ask me questions on any topic that they like, but we want to make sure that this forum is focused on the things that we're trying to get the panel to get an answer to.
Okay, so that's Alberta's premier on that. Except here's the thing, like those two speakers were not redirected to their MLAs or their ministers, right? The one was told that his parents should take him over their knee and spank him. And the other one was informed that the conversation will continue as soon as that lady leaves. It would be, as a matter of fact, very difficult to be more dismissive or more disrespectful than Bruce McAllister was to those two Albertans, to those two taxpayers, to those two voters. They were not treated with respect. Not in the least. And as a matter of fact, on full display of the World Wide Web, maybe the moderator himself, a veteran broadcaster, forgot that this was live streaming and the internet doesn't forget. But this was a major gaffe, right? Chat F says, I wish I was surprised by this. This in our live chat powered by Park Power. He says, but it seems very on brand for the current government. JJ says Bruce is not a moderator. Here's the thing, JJ. He is a moderator. Bruce and I used to compete against each other in morning television until I moved over to the company that he worked for until he left. I've worked with Bruce on panels. He is a moderator, and he is a professional broadcaster, and he absolutely should know better than this. JJ says he shouldn't be doing this, but the UCP would only bring in someone who's a verifiable moron. Ken K says, had that kid, Evan, asked about more pipelines, I'm sure that they would have welcomed the off-topic comment. Now, the premier says that she's accepted Bruce's apology. This is what she's talking about. He tweeted from his account at McAllister Bruce last night while moderating the Alberta Next panel. He tweeted this on the morning of the 30th. So this was National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, by the way. So he's talking about the Sunday night. He says, while moderating the Alberta Next panel, I made an inappropriate remark to a participant. I regret saying it and I apologize. I'm committed to ensuring these conversations remain respectful and constructive. Andrew Friesen, by the way, a data scientist, many of you may know, responded to his tweet, says the one clip that most Albertans will see of these Alberta Next panels, and Andrew's right, they've been going on all summer, and they're about 2 hours apiece. But this is the one clip that everybody's going to see, he says, is you cutting off and berating a kid who mustered the courage to ask a question. Whatever the output of this exercise is now dead on arrival, as it's clear the intent was never to listen to Albertans. Congratulations. And I think that Andrew makes a fair point. There's two things to talk about here, right? I mean, the overarching theme is the disrespect and quite frankly, the sort of Mickey Mouse amateur hour job that the moderator did in this circumstance. But two things happen. Number one, the microphone is cut off mid-sentence before a question is even asked of the premier. And this was not a question about something outrageous. This was not disrespectful. There were no insults. There was no profanity. None of that. This was a young, engaged Albertan, the exact type of person that political parties target the exact type of individual that anybody is eager to hear from. The young people, the youth, the leaders of today and tomorrow. We say this stuff all the time. So there's the cutting off and the silencing and the censoring, right? The picking and choosing who gets to ramble on. If you go earlier in that clip, we're not going to spend all morning going through the Alberta Next panel. We'll link to it in our show notes to CPAC's YouTube channel. You'll hear folks, and I'm not insulting what they brought to the table. I am not denigrating the messages that they delivered, but I'm simply making a point. An older lady right before Evan takes quite some time to explain why she's upset that they didn't perform or sing "O Canada" at the beginning of the Alberta Next panel. Guess what they do? They hear her out. Guess what they do? They let her talk. Guess what else? It has absolutely nothing to do with the future of an Alberta police service. Zip! Zero! But they let her have her moment. Bruce McAllister and potentially the Premier decided, or the Premier's team, that Evan Lee did not get to have his moment. So Danielle Smith wants this story to go away. I would too if I was the Premier. I would too if I had spent who knows how much rolling out this Alberta Next panel, hoping to be able to put something in front of 5 million Albertans that was perceived to be objective and legitimate. But now, who's going to believe it? Now, the Alberta NDP, the opposition to this government, is obviously having a field day with this. And so they put their digital team, they put their social team to work, picking some clips, picking some highlights of the moderator's performance in past Alberta Next panels. And it turns out through the summer months, there's been a bit of a trend when it's come to how Albertans, just like you, have been treated at these publicly funded town halls.
When Edmonton speaks, we listen.
Get lost. Nobody did that. Nobody did that. Don't be a jerk. Like, seriously. Go ahead.
I think that's disgusting. The problem is...
Okay, shut the mic off. You did pretty well for somebody who didn't know what I was asking you.
Can you do that?
Wow. Wow.
Get on with it.
Okay. You're like 2 minutes in, Jabril. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
You can make your opinion known. It's how you do it. Let's go over here. Sorry, man. It's like just way over the time. What are you going to do?
You would let other people to go ahead. But whenever it's against your will, against your opinion, you don't let people go over.
No, it's not that at all. I'm with you, but I can't play favorites. I absolutely know that you are all thinking the same thing I'm thinking.
Thank you, Bruce, for moderating tonight.
So as somebody who moderates and hosts approximately 50 events a year, let me tell you that when you're hired to be the host or the moderator of something and you become the story and it's not a good story, that's not a good thing. The entire Alberta Next panel has been overshadowed and I would say completely diminished. The work that it was hoping to accomplish has all but evaporated in the public's eye with this incident down in Calgary. I'll also say on a side note that Evan Lee, the young student, and we've been in contact with Evan, by the way, he sends his regrets on this morning's episode because as he tells us, with the teachers' strike looming, he absolutely must be in class right now because every single second in school is imperative. That's what Evan told us. But if Evan's looking for any encouragement, I would say, number one, he has awoken a beast. And number two, there is more attention now being paid to what Evan wanted to talk about than had his question been respectfully submitted to the Premier, to the panel, had it been entertained with a gracious response as opposed to dismissive denigration and perverted suggestions about spanking, which should not be overlooked, by the way. I mean, like I said, there's two parallel storylines here, right? There's the censorship and cutting off and I keep calling him a young person. I mean, he's an Albertan. He's just as invested in this province as anybody else. He cares deeply enough. I don't know this guy personally, but he cares deeply enough as a high school student to spend his free time in a public venue with hundreds of other people listening to a bunch of politicians and industry experts talk about their priorities in the relationship with Ottawa, grinding the axe again and again and again. High school students that are that engaged in politics, that have the initiative, that have the wherewithal, that have the confidence to step in front of a microphone at a town hall and ask a question should not be disrespected. They should not be denigrated. It should not be suggested, by the way, and there's a lot of comments in our chat line right now, people wondering, who's spanking their kids anymore, let alone their high school kids? It's a weird comment. So where does the government go from here? Where does all of this go from here? Well, it's going to depend on public pressure, probably. And with the teachers' strike looming, probably just a few days away from when we're talking to you now, October 6th, that's a Monday, is the day that everybody has circled on their calendar. This is about to get even more heated. Now, Bruce McAllister can fall on the grenade here and create some distance between himself and the premier, right? So she doesn't have to own this one. The moderator can own it. And quite frankly, the moderator should own this one based on how he treated this kid, Evan. If I know anything about how political insiders operate and how appointments work, he's not going to leave his job. He's making a great salary, and I'm sure that he has the support of those around him. Until it becomes too politically inconvenient for this government. And I would say that we could be at a point where if this pressure continues, that's exactly the scenario that this government is going to find itself in. The right move is for Bruce McAllister to resign. If Bruce McAllister does not resign, then the right move is for the government to let him go. The government gets a little bit lucky in the sense that it's next Alberta Next panel, the ones to follow, the wrap-ups, so to speak, are now moved online. So there's less of a chance for the government to encounter those inconvenient alternative opinions, those challenging questions that the premier might face. To Danielle Smith's credit, she is willing to take tough questions. She sits on this show. She doesn't turn down many high-profile interviews, and she'll say that to you again and again. You've heard her say that, and she's right. Danielle Smith, throughout her career, has granted interviews across the political spectrum, and she's never shied away from engaging in debate, which is why I find this scenario to be even more curious. I want to know what you think about this in an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. We've got the flamethrower coming up. Those are the final episodes of every week. That's the Friday episode this week, October 3rd, which, by the way, also happens to be the Real Talk Edmonton mayoral debate featuring the top 3 polling candidates, Tim Cartmel, Michael Walters, and Andrew Knack. At the conclusion of that episode, we'll roll out another episode of The Flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, where you can have your say. For our audience in Southern Alberta, including those of you in Calgary, we'll let you know that the following Friday, that's the 10th of October, we'll present our Real Talk Calgary mayoral candidates debate. Because we're doing that remotely, we can accommodate the top 5 polling candidates, and you'll hear them right here on Real Talk. In our live chat, powered by Park Power, Randy wants to know, it's kind of quiet out there, Jespo. How are the NDP town halls going? I guess Randy wanting to point out that the NDP did not form government and the UCP did. Randy, while it makes me chuckle, I would point out that government can be taken for granted and winning elections can be taken for granted. But the more that you chip away at how the public feels about you, the more you make members of the public, including young, engaged voters, political participants, the more precarious your position can become. Now, you know, I don't champion or cheer for one political party in Alberta over the other, but when I see the writing on the wall, I'm going to talk about it. And this is, no matter which way you slice it, a very tough look for the UCP. And it also, Randy, to take away your ammo for future comments and comebacks, has nothing to do with Mark Carney or Justin Trudeau or the carbon tax or nice hair or fancy socks. This is a problem of the UCP's doing, in particular its moderator, Bruce McAllister. Tanya says, oddly enough, this focus on our relationship with Ottawa is not what Albertans actually want to talk about. We want to talk about stuff that actually matters to us. Ms. B says, I was also really pissed off at the blatant gaslighting from the moderator, telling the student that he, quote, didn't make sense. Ms. B says he made perfect sense. I'm just like you, Ms. B. If you went back and listened to that a couple of times, a few times even, I rewound it back. I turned it up as loud as I could hear it because once Evan's mic was cut, it was difficult to hear the rest of what he was trying to say. The mic is cut rather abruptly, and you don't hear the rest of what he has to say. But I thought that while I said he was coming across a little hot, which is perfectly fine. We've heard people at conservative political gatherings in past. It's never made the premier uncomfortable when people have been passionate behind microphones. And so I don't understand why he chose to not only cut off and censor the high school student, but why he also chose to insult him and to insinuate that he didn't make sense. He made perfect sense. Cassandra says, yeah, and the lady after, I believe her name was Jennifer, asking about marginalized people, marginalized population in regards to policing. How on earth do you dismiss that question? How on earth do you cut it off? Like, thanks to Cassandra for the comment. This is me talking now. If you have an opportunity at a town hall to address concerns that people have, that people are passionate about, and their concerns representing large communities, right? Like when Evan's talking about students or teachers, when someone's talking about marginalized populations, minority groups, how do you not invest the 30 to 45 to 60 seconds to take the question, especially in the context of a town hall? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Max says the student we're talking about is an IB student, an International Baccalaureate student, says he's not a kid causing trouble, says the premier has never been an advocate of public education. Others are saying, Matthew says, they can't vote, maybe, high school students, but they can sure write their MLA. They can protest. They can talk to their parents. It's disgusting for adults to shut them down and tell them that they're too young to have an opinion. And I would say, by the way, don't get too hung up on they're too young to vote. They're too young to vote right now. But if Evan's in high school, he's not going to be too young to vote for long, and he's probably going to be old enough to vote the next time that Albertans do vote provincially. And obviously this story goes way beyond the vote of the person who is behind the microphone, right? Bunny Slippers says they're paying that guy how much to disrespect Albertans? The answer is minimum $200,000. I don't know exactly. I'm sure it's on the Sunshine List. You can find it. Michael says, I wonder if the premier realizes Evan will be old enough to vote in the next election. Gabe says Bruce has not been very nice several times at these events. It's not for him. I would agree. I think that Bruce McAllister, while a skilled broadcaster, I know that Bruce isn't a big fan of mine, which is fine. I know so because he insulted me directly on a panel we were both participating in, and I've always kind of had a bit of a bee in my bonnet about that ever since. I guess this is my retribution 10 years later. But you can't have someone who's a bit of a sarcastic prick running events like this, right? You have to have somebody with grace. You have to have somebody with empathy. You have to have somebody who can stick to a schedule and keep the audience focused, generally speaking, but steer away from comments about, I don't know, spanking kids who have questions for the premier. Absolutely bonkers scenario. There's more here coming. I mean, our live chat is absolutely going nuts right now. Chantel says, the moderator cuts off the mics and then ostracizes Albertans. Unless it's a question the UCP likes, then I guess they can get their praise, right? I guess that's the way that it works. CP says you can't even get a hold of a minister's office anymore. Says at least with Jason Kenney, you could talk to him, and he even answered emails himself sometimes, says, and I rarely agreed with him. Tracy D says conspiracy theorists are suggesting that Smith signaled that she wanted the mic cut. Says, I don't buy it, but it certainly wouldn't shock me if it turned out to be true. Johnny, let's see if we can pull this off here. And in just a second, let me share my screen. Let me get set up here because there is something. This is pretty interesting. Watch this. I'm going to zoom in here. Casey, you can show this. This is CPAC. If we have the audio, you can use it. But check this out. So here's where Evan starts asking the question. I'm going to zoom in. Watch what the premier does. When it becomes obvious what he's asking, watch, she looks up and then You see that little move that she makes on her neck? You see that little move? Now, I don't know. And I understand the comments in the live chat where you say, yeah, this may be a conspiracy theory, but I noticed it myself. Like, I don't know. Like, it is very possible that there could be some sort of a scenario. It does come across as sounding a little bit conspiratorial, doesn't it? There could be a scenario or some sort of communication. Let's just scroll across here. So here's the moderator. I'm zoomed in here. I'm just zooming in on my laptop. But this is where the question comes in. You tell me, this is a little bit like the Zapruder film. So we're getting a little bit deep into this, maybe into conspiracy. But see that's right when he asks this question. And as soon as she looks like she's either scratching her neck or adjusting her necklace, which she very well may be doing, very shortly after the microphone is cut, she looks back to the moderator and nods as the microphone is cut. So I don't know if that was a call from the Premier herself. I would suspect that seems like a little bit small ball, seems like a little bit micromanaged on behalf of the Premier. That's my initial gut instinct, but you never know. Like I said, I've got plenty of experience moderating events like this. You all know that. If you follow me on LinkedIn, if you follow me on Instagram, you can see I'm doing stuff like this 2, 3, 4 times a month. It is not unusual to have production meetings ahead of time where you all decide how you will adhere to the subject matter. You all decide how you will stick to the plan, how you'll stick to the itinerary, how you'll stick to the schedule. You all have a plan in place, typically speaking, the host or the moderator, the panelists, the AV crew at the back, typically the event manager or the event planner. There's a lot of people involved in pulling something like this off. You have a plan, a contingency plan on what will happen if the event is interrupted. Sometimes it happens, an interruption in the sense of what Evan was trying to do, which is the exact point of a town hall. By the way, he did absolutely nothing wrong and he should have been permitted his time. Sometimes it's a protest group that'll show up and either try to steal the spotlight or literally storm the stage. You always have a plan. And I wonder if the plan was to cut off certain subject matter as soon as it popped up, including perhaps negotiations with Alberta's teachers and perhaps negotiations or lack of successful negotiations leading up to what is going to be a very disruptive teachers' strike. It is possible. I recognize how you could feel, like Tracy says, that would be a conspiracy theory, but the timing of the motion on the neck I did find to be interesting. Vincent says, I was at the Alberta Next panel in Calgary, says it was deplorable. Vincent says, I left feeling very frustrated and I'm just now saddened at the state of our politics in Alberta. He says, honestly, I'm not being hyperbolic. He says it was fashy. Is that short for fascist? He was fashy. Dubious says all the right-wing trolls are probably the same guy in Russia with a wall of cell phones in front of them and AI typing the comments when it comes to the pushback on this or folks supporting it. Ms. Katie says a person cut off in Medicine Hat at the Alberta Next panel was asking about the AISH clawbacks, which is directly related to the federal government. That's the Canada Disability Benefit that she's referencing. Absolutely. John is watching us live on Facebook right now. Thanks, John. And he says, Evan has become a perfect symbol as teachers head into a strike. Evan had a legitimate question about what students can expect going into a strike, and instead he was silenced. I want to get to more of your comments on this. We take our cues by what our audience is responding to, and there are hundreds of comments on this, so we'll stick with it. I also want to introduce another ball into the playing field here. There's another detail which is pretty interesting. The Alberta government is offering funding for families that are impacted by a potential teachers' strike. I actually think it's a really smart political move by this government. I'm curious to know where Real Talkers will land on that. More in a moment. Every week, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have a chance to step out into the Rocky Mountains, into Jasper National Park, and just take a look at the memories that lie in wait for us. It's My Jasper Memories, proudly presented by our friends at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. If you've ever been out to Jasper this time of year, you don't need me to tell you that this is arguably the most beautiful time of year to be out in Jasper National Park. The trees are well on their way through their fall transformation. The colors are absolutely exploding, and there is nowhere where this is more evident or more beautiful than the beautiful Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. Now, they've got some unbelievable things happening through these fall months, and of course, these are core memories that we're talking about. These are lifetime memories that we're talking about at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. Now, they have a fall deal that's happening right now, and if you've never had a chance to get out there with your family, this is the time to do it. The affordability of the fall deals at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge are going to change the game, I know, for a lot of people that have just been waiting for that one moment, the one opportunity to maybe make an impulse decision, to put the other plans to the side and make your way out to the Fairmont JPL. They currently have the best of autumn offerings happening right now, which is your chance to save up to 30%. That's right. Basically knock 30% off the investment that you're making in quality family time at the Fairmont JPL. Enjoy those golden trails, those mirrored lakes, and beautiful crisp mountain air. There's really nothing like it. Plus cozy rooms, warm drinks, and gourmet delights. Jasper in autumn and Jasper at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge is everything that you crave and everything that you don't yet know you crave. You can go to Fairmont.com to learn more about the Best of Autumn offer. We'll link to it directly in the show notes. This offer runs all the way through bookings until October 15th. So you have up until October 15th to book your Jasper getaway to qualify for that Best of Autumn offer and save up to 30% off. We also wanted to make sure that you have the Jasper Dark Sky Festival on your radar. That runs October 17th to 26th. It's epic 15th anniversary. Another season of stargazing, stories, and cosmic adventures under Jasper's starry skies. You know, it's one of the biggest dark sky preserves on planet Earth. I believe it's the second biggest on planet Earth. Now, the festival has it all, and you can check out jasperdarksky.travel for more details on 15 years under the stars. But I want to make sure that Saturday, October 25th is on your radar, a free live music concert with Talk, that Canadian singer-songwriter, best known for his hit single Runaway to Mars, the one that Johnny and I are obsessed with, the one that I play like 10 times in a row every single time that I hear it, every single time that I stream it. Talk is going to be highlighted there. By the way, a free show on Saturday, October 25th. His performance will be highlighted by a stunning drone show. It's a family-friendly event, and you can, of course, make your bookings today. That's October 17th through the 26th, the Jasper Dark Sky Festival. Make your reservation today at jasperdarksky.travel. My Jasper Memories is proudly presented weekly right here on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Man, the comments continue to pour in following the Alberta Next debacle. If you're just joining our live stream presented by California Closets, a high school student by the name of Evan Lee cut off his mic cut off as he attempted to ask the Premier and the panel a question about education. We don't know specifically the question he was trying to ask because, you know, his mic was cut off, but he had framed it with factual information that Alberta teachers have voted overwhelmingly to reject the latest four-year contract offer from the province of Alberta. Vamp Fashions wonders, is it possible that the student's comment was designed and inspired by his teacher, who he's spoken glowingly of and who most likely just voted to strike in a battle with the government? Who cares? Who cares? What difference does it make? Is it possible that anybody's question asked at a town hall was fashioned or shaped or formed directly or indirectly by somebody else who has influence in their life? Who knows? Should teachers not have a voice at the Alberta Next panels? What's the insinuation with the question? I don't understand it. Chantel says Evan Lee will be of voting age come next provincial vote, and hopefully he spanks the UCP right out of office. How about that? Justin says this is obviously a pattern for Bruce, the moderator. I have family that attended the Edmonton panel, and his disrespect and his disdain was a top note and on full display. And Bustion says Bruce thinking about, letting alone talking about spanking teenage boys is weird. I feel like this is almost like parallel conversations we need to have, right? Like the one is cutting the kid off on the mic and then cutting off the subsequent comment from the commentator as well, from Jennifer, I believe her name was. So there's that. And that's something that a moderator can own, right? That's something that you can say, listen, I got overzealous in trying to stick to the plan. I got a little too enthusiastic in trying to keep us on track. There's many ways to make excuses for a lack of judgment in a moment at a live event, right? Guys, like I said, I've got lots of experience. I probably have the most experience of anybody in the province of Alberta when it comes to moderating events like this. I don't know who does more than me. That's not a brag. That's just a fact. So I understand it. I don't know, and I can't imagine the justification for the spanking comment. I can't imagine it. Had Evan been a female student, I think we would all agree. I hope that Bruce wouldn't have said it. I don't know, but he would have been immediately removed from the stage. Perhaps because Evan is male. Perhaps that creates a situation where it's able to be laughed off or dismissed as more of a joke. But no matter which way you put it, in 2025, we acknowledge it's not 1955, right? We're not tapping secretaries on the ass when they walk by while we smoke cigarettes in our offices anymore, right? This isn't Mad Men, right? This is 70 years after that, and it is absolutely inappropriate to suggest that anybody should be spanked at any town hall put on by any government in any jurisdiction in the free world. Can we all agree on that? I think so, right? Ken says the premier is a master on not answering the question. Ms. KD says, Evan has shown nothing but respect and thoughtful dialogue when invited on Nahed Nenchi's live, respect toward his teachers and his peers. Emily wonders, what the fuck is the point of a town hall if nobody can ask any questions? Randy, by the way, says, I listened to the Edmonton town hall and I thought that Bruce did a good job with a lot of obvious NDP plants in the room. I have to ask what constitutes an NDP plant. Like, is an NDP plant somebody that would have a concern or take issue with the way that a government is managing a file? Like, is the whole point of a town hall, like, legitimately and actually for a government to solicit feedback from its citizens? And if the government is not interested in the feedback from its citizens, if the feedback is not glowing, then is there any legitimacy to the town hall itself? And if everybody who may have some concern or take issue with the way that the province is being run, if every single one of those people is an NDP plant, then is every single person that speaks in support of the government a UCP plant? Is that how dumb we're going to down this thing when we're analyzing exactly whose voices are welcome at these types of forums and whose aren't? Because if this is all just designed to be an exercise of glowing feedback and wonderful remarks celebrating the province's incredible achievements under Premier Danielle Smith, shouldn't this be a UCP-funded, party-affiliated, ticketed event? Should public dollars really be going to cover the cost of AV and event rentals and hall rentals and staffing and security and travel and, I'm assuming, remuneration, payment for all of the people that are participating on this panel? Shouldn't that be covered by the party and not the government if we're concerned about, quote, NDP plants in the crowd? If you're a veteran politician or if you're a veteran broadcaster who's moderating an event featuring veteran politicians, shouldn't you expect some diversity in thought in who's going to be speaking and who's going to be asking questions and what they're going to be asking questions about? JJ says, I get that he's a moderator in practice, but what he's doing is not moderation. It's not professional. JJ is bang on in that. He says it's not ethical, and it certainly doesn't represent what moderators today strive for. Emily says, refusing to listen to somebody because of their tone or whatever is absolutely gaslighting. Bunny Slipper says, finding out an hour before that teachers were going on strike, that is absolutely terrifying for a grade 12 or for a high school student in particular, especially those who are gearing up for post-secondary. 100%. T6 says, I think that Evan raised his voice when the crowd got louder, and then when his mic was cut off, he just wanted to be heard. T6 says, I'm proud of him as a parent of a 17-year-old honor student. That from T6. Ms. B says the Premier gets all worked up about non-existent things like, chemtrails all the time. I don't know about that. And the topic is a perfect example of what actually doesn't make any factual sense. You're right in the sense that she has entertained some absolutely wild questions from people on things that are far less sane than asking about a teacher strike or education funding or book bans or whatever it is that Evan wanted to get to. White Dream says, had I been there when that happened, I would have stood up and asked Bruce who you think you are. And Buston says Alberta is the epicenter of the Republican infection in Alberta. You're getting the sense of where this audience is at, generally speaking. And I often talk to you, and we often point out, because I think it deserves to be pointed out, and it's something that we're very proud of, that this show's audience is a diverse audience. When someone like firearms lawyer Ian Runkle is on, we hear from those of you on the left that are furious about the interview. And then when someone like independent journalist Rachel Gilmore is on, we hear from many of you, bless you all, or at least bless most of you, who don't want to hear her on the show. We know that there are folks on this show listening every single day. We appreciate you very much who voted for Danielle Smith and the UCP. There are folks every single day listening to this show that voted for the NDP last provincial election. There are folks that are politically agnostic, and there are many of you that just want to see good, common sense governance. And I don't think, as a matter of fact, I know for a fact that what went down on Calgary is not that. How could this Alberta Next experiment, this traveling roadshow through the summer, instill any confidence in anybody with any sort of standards on what government transparency and public free speech looks like? It can't. And so the entire exercise has been neutered, if not before what happened in Calgary with Evan Lee's mic being cut off, but when Evan Lee's mic was cut off in the province of Alberta. I'm welcome to entertain, and I'm happy to entertain alternative perspectives on this, and you can send us an email anytime, but you'd have to work pretty hard to convince me that what happened down in Calgary was a win in any way, shape, or form for this government. It's a tough look, and I think it's the type of situation that can get away on a government if they're not careful about it and if it's not managed properly. And quite frankly, in a situation like this, it's probably time for Mr. McAllister to fall on his sword so the distraction doesn't hurt the government any further. If we know anything about the way that these appointments and networks work, he'll find another fantastic employment opportunity soon enough. There are folks that will love what he did, and I'm sure be happy to bring him on board as a vice president of comms and government relations or some sort of lobbyist where he can treat people however he likes out of the public eye and off the World Wide Web. I want to talk about the government's funding for Alberta families if and when this teacher strike happens. That coming up in just a moment. But first, I want to remind you that the team at Kubi Renewable Energy is celebrating 10 years. 10 years, that's right, in operation as Western Canada's busiest solar installer. Things are happening and happening fast at Kubi. Their next 10 years are going to be absolutely unbelievable under the leadership of their CEO, Jake Kubisky. I love that guy's story. Oil and gas electrician for many, many years, worked a lot in Fort McMurray and saw where the trends were going. Decided to take a risk. He and his high school buddy Adam, with one truck, started this company. This is a wonderful Alberta success story. 10 years later, they're employing hundreds of people, proudly headquartered out of Edmonton, Calgary, offices in Lethbridge and Kamloops, helping thousands of Western Canadians achieve their sustainability goals. You can get a free quote today. You could have panels on your roof before the snow flies. You can request a free solar quote today by visiting kubi.ca. Speaking of wins in Alberta, Albertans are winning every single day. on Play Alberta. You can download the Play Alberta app today if you want to learn more about some of these particular promotions that they've got going on right now. But not only is Play Alberta the most safe and secure way to bet casino, sports, and lottery online, not only does all revenue go right back to the province, but Albertans are winning big every single day. 10, 50, even as much as $100,000 won daily on Play Alberta. And best of all, for a limited time only, new players can receive a $1,000 casino bonus. You can download the Play Alberta app today, check out all those great offers, and get started. Check out playalberta.ca for more details, and please play responsibly. You know, talking about Canada's oil sands, you know, six of the biggest oil sands companies in the country are working together through the Pathways Alliance to help grow Canada's economy. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, talked about the Pathways Alliance initiative in our interview with him on the 10th of September. You can check that out. His point reiterating that Canada benefits from a strong energy sector. And with the oil and gas sector supporting almost 500,000 jobs across the country, generating billions in tax, the Pathways Alliance initiative has never been more important. You can learn more about contributions by the oil sands industry to the Canadian economy and the environmental targets that Pathways Alliance endeavors to achieve by visiting their website today. That's pathwaysalliance.ca. And a big shout out to our friends at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. This is a huge year for the team at the Royal Alex. You know, for 125 years, the Royal Alexandra Hospital has been so much more than just a building. It's been a place where moments of care echo through generations, from the first breath of a newborn to the comfort given in life's hardest moments. Every story within the walls of the Alex sends out ripples, touching families, shaping communities, and inspiring the care of tomorrow. These are the echoes of the Alex. And with your gift today, those echoes continue, carrying forward hope, healing, and compassion for generations yet to come. Show your support today by visiting givetoroyalalex.org. Comments continue on our live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. Shy Courage, what a great handle, by the way. Shy Courage says, cutting off the mic is a prime example of an unwillingness to show the truth. Michael says, this teacher's strike will be the largest the province has ever had, and if it lasts for a while, it will actually affect Alberta's GDP. Yeah. So here's what's likely to happen on Monday, October 6th, after Alberta teachers have voted overwhelmingly, nearly 90%, to reject the latest contract offer from the provincial government. It looks like a strike is imminent. We'll have details on that and a full conversation about it on the morning of October 6th, should that situation manifest itself. But of course, if you're a family that has kids in school, then you're already putting contingency plans in place, right? You can't wait until Monday morning at 7 a.m. to figure out where your elementary students are going to hang out while you're at work, or to figure out who's going to cover you at work while you're at home with your young students and the like. So the Alberta government has rolled out an initiative that will supply Alberta families. It'll provide Alberta families with $30 a day, $150 per week for every student that family has currently enrolled in school. It's a situation, of course, that will allow some families to make the necessary pivots, to make the adjustments that they need to make, to hire babysitters, to cover childcare or other expenses that may arise as part of this unique situation. And that's probably the biggest talking point for this government. But what also must be pointed out is the savvy political move that this is too. Now, you're going to hear from a lot of people, and you're going to see a lot of them on the picket lines. Again, if this strike manifests itself, which it looks like it's going to. We've seen 11th hour agreements in past, and that very well could happen here. This show, I, as the parent of a school-age child and as an Albertan, hope that they can find resolution and that the school year is uninterrupted. But if it's not, you'll see teachers on the picket line. You'll see people driving by and honking and showing their support. I'm sure that there will be people that will be bringing coffee and donuts to the teachers that are striking to show their support. And there will be people that feel quite the opposite. Not everyone is in the teacher's corner on this one. And the government knows that prolonged or extended high-profile labor disputes can oftentimes reflect poorly on the government if the government can't sort it out. But this is a delicate dance. So you're going to see the Alberta Teachers Association, you're going to see school boards, you're going to see individual teachers doing what they can to get their message out to the public, to get their advocacy front and center, to explain why they rejected a 4-year contract offer with terms that on the surface look not too bad. Approximate 12% pay raise over those 4 years. But as we've heard from Jason Schilling, president at the Alberta Teachers Association in past, as you'll hear from him again on this show next week, if a strike manifests itself, it's not all about the money. It's about more than that. It's about class sizes. It's about funding. It's about jurisdictional decisions. It's about provincial government overreach. Whether or not that stuff is included in the pages of a collectively bargained agreement, it is still relevant. Make no mistake, the relationship between Alberta's teachers and Alberta's government right now is extremely strained. And while both sides may be motivated to avoid a labor dispute, something tells me neither side is nervous about taking it that far. So the Alberta government providing funding for Alberta families, $150 per week per student already enrolled in school, is, in my mind, yes, a way to compensate Alberta families who will incur extra costs to manage the toll that a strike like this takes, but also a government with serious purchasing power, right? We don't know what this initiative is going to cost because we don't know how long a potential strike is going to last for, but this could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. This could cost, in theory, billions of dollars, depending on how long this goes for. So how does a government win favor or maintain favor with the public? By doing what it can to indicate that it understands the struggle that families are going through. It understands the inconveniences that families are experiencing as a result of teachers rejecting the offer, another offer from the provincial government. You see how easy this is to communicate if you're the government, if you're the education minister, if you're the premier. Now, as this gets more and more contentious, if it does, wink, wink, then this will become more and more of a story. And I'm sure that someone will be tracking the total cost. I wonder if the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which did have a comment on this, by the way, you can check it out on their social media platforms. I wonder if they'll have a debt clock similar to what they've set up in Ottawa, where they can see the cost of the $150 a week it's costing Alberta families and taxpayers to receive that same funding back to themselves from government because of an extended teachers' strike. Now, these are the numbers that we'll crunch for commentary purposes over the course of however long this may be. But I'm curious to know where you land on this. I personally think that it's an astute move by this government to get ahead of some of the criticism and to get some families that may be right now a little bit ambiguous about this, families that don't obsess over politics like some of us do, families that are just worried about their day-to-day, hearing that the government has their back on funding for childcare while the school schedule is interrupted, you have to imagine will work in the government's favor. But I could be wrong on this. This could land with a thud. Let us know what you think in a submission to the show, either a comment on our YouTube episode, you can leave a comment on Spotify, or you can send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. I suspect that there may be some submissions for the flamethrower. Again, that's coming up on Friday, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Tommy Temper in our chat says a moderator's off-the-cuff comment does not represent the entire UCP. Tommy, you're absolutely right. But if the UCP, led by the Premier of Alberta, does not take appropriate action to respond to the comment, then the government's got to own the comment. You know what I'm saying? He was hired by them. He is hired by them. He is their moderator. And if the Premier's standing by him, she says his apology is satisfactory to her, then she will have to own this one. She will. Scarlett says, it's amazing to me that some people don't think that a 17-year-old kid could form his own opinions or thoughts. No kidding, right? Like, we'll allow them to drive at 16, we drive cars, but we don't think that they can form their thoughts at 17, and then by 18, they're smart enough that we're happy enough to grant them the vote. It's amazing what happens right around that 363rd, 364th day of someone's 17th year, isn't it? They automatically figure it all out. Kenzie says, have you guys even watched the panels? The point of the questions are to discuss one of 6 topics. Sure, Kenzie. But like I said, the long comment before, and I'm not looking to insult the individual that put herself out there and spoke at the Alberta Next panel before, but what did Singing O Canada have to do with anything as well? Nothing. The moderator's picking and choosing which microphones he's silencing and which ones he's allowing to stay on, and that just doesn't make sense to anybody. Erica, and if it does make sense to you, by the way, you need to rethink your whole idea around the purpose of a town hall, right? This is not a congratulatory, may I say, masturbatory exercise. This is a town hall, an open forum. This is why you never open the mic at your wedding, because you never know what you're going to get. Erica says, like, it seems like they just can't handle somebody who breaks the immersion of that circle jerk. Okay. See, you can bring the comments to this show that you can't bring to other shows, and let us know what you think. Jerry says, I did go to an NDP town hall last week in Grand Prairie. Twice, the same gentleman asked off-topic questions, and then she answered them. They didn't cut his mic or disrespect him. Well, there you go. Yin and yang. We'll continue this story as it deserves, as it remains in the public eye. I would suspect that there could be a development here if Bruce McAllister doesn't resign and public pressure remains. Then I suspect the government will have to do something about it. He could be saved by the bell. He could be saved by the fact that the next panels will be online. He will be relatively unavailable to members of the public, and within a few short months, with short memories, folks will forget that this ever happened, except for the most engaged political watchers on planet Earth, the beloved subscribers and audience members of this show. We thank you for joining us this episode. We thank you in advance for joining us on the 3rd of October, Friday, our Real Talk Edmonton mayoral debate, and the following Friday, October 10th, the Real Talk Calgary mayoral debate, as we get you set for the next municipal election, province-wide, coming up on the 20th of October. School trustees will be elected as well. Choose wisely, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.